All right, I think we are good to go. I'm going to start accepting panelists briefly.
All right, commissioners, I believe we are ready. Any objection to our starting? All right. So hello, everyone. My name is David Wimamora. I'm the chair of the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. I want to welcome everyone to our third listening session, this time in the great boroughs of Manhattan and the Bronx. Thank you all for joining us today. First, I wanted to acknowledge my fellow commissioners. We have Commissioners Willis Stevens, Ross Brady, Evelise Cuevas Molina, and we will soon be joined by Commissioners Conway and Frazier. So we will have a total of 6 commissioners. Second, I want to thank the men and women behind the curtain who are making this work. The great staff of our commission, co-executive director Karen Blatt, deputy co-executive director Isis McIntosh Green, director of public engagement Asia Badi, assistant director of engagement Miranda Goodwin Robb, data manager Jonathan Rivas, co-executive director Douglas Brakel, deputy co-executive director Kevin Murphy, assistant director of engagement Danielle Futia, and data manager David Schaefer. Today, we are embarking on New York's first ever public redistricting process, where average New Yorkers have the opportunity to weigh in on their district lines. In terms of our calendar, we will be having a series of sessions as part of our listening tour between now and mid-August. On August 16th, the Census Bureau will release New York's redistricting census data. After that, we will then prepare an initial set of proposed lines, which will be published, given to the public on September 15th, followed by another round of meetings soliciting public input on our initial proposal, followed by our presenting those proposals to the legislature in January. Please note, for those of you who are not able to sign up for today's session, we'll be having a catch-all session for the entire state in mid-August prior to our beginning to draw the lines. So if you did not have the time to prepare to join us today, please join us at the hearing then. In addition, whether or not you speak before the commission, we actively encourage you to submit written materials to us. Only so much can be said in 3 minutes, so please feel free to submit additional materials, be it letters, maps, photos of communities, whatever you think will help with our community. Some logistical points. Each speaker will be allocated 3 minutes. We have our timer on the Zoom, which will indicate how much time every person has remaining. We will mute speakers if they exceed their time. Commissioners will not be asking questions. All of this session, as well as all written materials submitted to the commission, will be posted on our website at nyirc.gov. As we've discussed, we are asking the public to provide information on 2 things before we start putting pen to paper and drawing lines. First, we are asking for information on your communities as they relate to redistricting. Tell us about your neighborhood, your religious group, your school district, your village, and why as a community, you should be kept together for redistricting. This is what is known in redistricting circles as a community of interest, and that is what we're interested in. Second, we are also asking for your input on how your present districts can be improved. Again, I want to thank everyone involved, but especially members of the public, for making your voices heard. This is the first time that everyday New Yorkers will be able to provide input on the lines, and I think I speak for all of my fellow commissioners when I say we intend to make the most of it. This process will only work because of your help, so thank you so much for joining us. One final note, there's been some confusion in past input sessions as to the jurisdiction of the commission. We are not responsible for city council redistricting. We are responsible for state legislative districts as well as congressional districts. So state assembly, state senate, and congressional districts. So with that, let me pass it over to Commissioner Ivelis Cuevas Molina, who has much more of a direct connection to today's hearing than I do. Ivelis, you want to take it away?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Mora, for introducing me. I want to thank all of the staff for all of your hard work and helping us get this done and getting us connected to the people of New York State. Our priority is for us to hear directly from you what your needs are, what your communities of interest are, and how our work can help you in your interactions with government, right? And as a person who lives in Manhattan, works in the Bronx, I am very, very excited to hear from our participants today. I am very happy to know that there are many people who signed up to do their civic duty and engage democratically with the Independent Redistricting Commission of the state of New York. So I look forward to your comments, and I hope that even if you weren't able to speak to us directly, that you will submit written materials for us to review as we engage in the process of drawing your district lines.
Commissioners Brady, Stevens, would you like to speak?
Can't really.
Defer to Ross.
Okay. Well, as another New Yorker, I just want to. You can't do any better than Dr. Cuevas Molina, so I don't know how to improve on that, except to emphasize those that are not submitting at this listening session or at the catch all. Please do submit something at the website, and you will have an opportunity after the lines are drawn again to submit that will be more reactive. It's all about, again, opening this process up, being as transparent, open, and inclusive as possible. And I'm proud to be a part of it and thank my fellow commissioners for all their work as well, and all of you behind the scenes. And now it's time to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Brady. Miranda, if we could get started, please.
Great. First, we have Peter Morley. Peter, you will be invited to speak.
Hi, Peter. How are you? You are on mute, Peter. You are still on mute, Peter. Yep. Okay. Yeah. No, you are still on mute, Peter. Sorry. Okay, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. I hope
Okay.
I'm into my 3 minutes.
No, don't worry.
Okay. I'm trembling here. My name is Peter Morley, and I'm a resident of the 12th Congressional District and a healthcare advocate. In 2007, I was permanently disabled from an accident. In 2011, I survived kidney cancer and fought my way into remission after losing part of my right kidney. In 2013, I was diagnosed with lupus, which causes me severe fatigue. I manage over 10 pre-existing conditions, take 38 medications, and self-inject myself with weekly biologic infusions to slow the progression of my disease. All of my treatments were in the 12th Congressional District. My spinal surgeries were at Beth Israel, which no longer exists. My kidney cancer surgery was at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I had 2 pituitary tumors removed at New York Presbyterian. My primary physician is affiliated with NYU, and my rheumatologists and coordinated doctors are in residence at the Hospital for Special Surgery and New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell. I am so grateful and appreciative that Manhattan's East Side is the epicenter of the New York medical establishment, whose world-class excellence attracts doctors and patients from New York City, the nation, and the world. The 12th Congressional District incorporates many of New York's hospitals, specialty hospitals, and public hospitals. It is not an accident that so many excellent hospitals are located in such a small area. They are able to share talent, ideas, and perspectives. It is natural that so many medical institutions located near one another should have one member of Congress who can become intimately familiar with their concerns. Because of the concentration of hospitals in the east side of Manhattan, who has a dense concentration of doctors who work and reside on the east side, doctors often are affiliated with several hospitals. New Yorkers who work in the hospital industry have shared interests and shared concerns, particularly when it comes to federal programs that fund or regulate the medical industry. It helps to have one representative who truly understands those interests. Our hospitals remain the best because of the extraordinary research they do. They attract truly talented doctors and scientists who are able to make great strides in medical research. It helps to have a member of Congress who understands the importance of increasing the amount of federal research dollars available. For individuals living with rare diseases or chronic illnesses, the ability for this research to garner federal funding can be a life and death situation. Many members of Congress have an opportunity that dominates their community. For some, it is agriculture, for others, defense, for others, the auto industry. Those members of Congress are necessarily well informed about the issues that affect that industry. An informed member is a better partner. The 12th Congressional District has many important industries, but the concentration of hospitals, doctors, and medical researchers in our area ensures that medicine is a primary concern to the representative of this district. I urge and implore you as a healthcare advocate and as a patient with complex chronic illnesses to keep all of the hospitals in Manhattan's East Side in the same congressional district. I thank you as somebody who has fought and made it my life's mission to make the voices of millions of patients around the country be heard. This is my service animal. Today is the anniversary of the ADA.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and congratulations on your recovery and best of luck from all of us. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Next, we have Laura Friedman. Laura, you'll be invited to speak.
Hi,
Hello.
Laura, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Friedman, and I'm the president of the Morningside Heights Historic District Committee, MHHDC. The Morningside Heights Historic District Committee was formed in the 1990s to preserve our neighborhood by pursuing a New York City Historic District designation. Though we prefer to be known as Morningside Heights, our community is often referred to as the Upper West Side. We are testifying today because we believe that the west side of Manhattan should remain in its own congressional district. When we achieved the first phase of historic districting, one of our crowning achievements was connecting all of Riverside Drive from its beginning block on West 72nd Street all the way up to West 119th Street. Manhattan is a largely linear borough, and the distinction is quite clear when you look at the way we are organized, both socially and structurally. Our subways run north and south on the west side, meeting up through our large transportation hubs, such as the Port Authority, Penn South, PATH trains, and the Fulton Center. Riverside Park, running along the Hudson River, not only connects us socially, but allows us to develop the necessary protections that are needed for this unique west side stretch of parkland. It is no surprise that the west side of Manhattan has the largest number of periodical readers in the country. Morningside Heights, which is represented by the 10th Congressional District, has a higher concentration of diverse academic institutions than any other area in New York City. This helps us to create an intellectual synergy that is particularly felt on the west side and attracts those in the academic fields to our community. Additionally, we still retain the wonderful advantages of being a diverse community, both economically and ethnically, that brings a richness to our West Side experience. Due to our proximity to the great artistic institutions of New York City, such as Lincoln Center, Broadway, Carnegie Hall, and the avant-garde areas of Chelsea, Greenwich Village, and Soho, we are fortunate enough to attract many performing artists as well. In addition to those honored bastions of the arts, we have some of the premier performing arts institutions, Juilliard and the Manhattan School of Music, that create new dancers, musicians, actors, and skilled technicians. They are the future of our great American creative vibrancy, and many of them live on the West Side. So does the West Side have a distinct character from the East Side? Indeed, it does. From our infrastructure, which moves us up and down the West Side, to our schools, community boards, essential services, and to the unique neighborhoods that inhabit our blocks, this all creates a distinct and remarkable part of New York City that just deserves to have its own representative. We have a myriad of particular interests that would be enhanced and protected by having our single member of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Manhattan Borough President Gil Brewer.
Thank you.
Madam President, how are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Chair, and Maura, I'm well. I am Gil Brewer. I am the borough president, and I did testify about congressional district lines about 10 years ago, because I've been around a long time. At that time, I represented the City Council 6th District, and it was the best district in the sense it went from 54th to 96th Street, didn't have any carve outs, and people knew where they lived, and it was great. I want to say that since then, of course, I've become borough president, and I think I know the borough of Manhattan as well as anybody, all the streets and all the nooks and crannies, 7.5 years. But what I've learned more than anything else is that every part of the Upper West Side, the East Side, Northern Manhattan, as you heard from others, is distinct. They're all great communities, but they are distinct. The West Side, the East Side, Uptown, they have unique needs. Historically, each has been served by their own congressional district, and that needs to continue. There are some traditions that are worth upending. We do it all the time, but this one is worth keeping. And I urge you, this is my main message, to preserve these historic boundaries. Our city is already organized, recognizing these boundaries. You know that. You heard earlier about the subway lines. It's also true of the precincts. It's true of the community boards. And I want to give some examples. Representative Nadler's district includes 2 very important universities, a deeply rooted LGBT community, all the way from the Village, all the way up to Morningside Heights and beyond. It's very diverse in its Jewish community, and it has so many of the Port Authority's facilities, the bus terminal, the Holland and Lincoln tunnels, Penn Station, the PATH, the World Trade Center. And of course, it has the park and the river along the West Side. Representative Carolyn Maloney's district, as you heard earlier from the wonderful person who talked about the hospitals, has cohesive East Side neighborhoods. It has Stuytown, Peter Cooper, Fifth Avenue, and what some, and he referred to as Bed Penn Alley, the greatest hospitals in the world. Representative Adriana Espiat has Uptown. It has the territory that is Harlem, West, Central, and East. They're all different, but they're all part of Harlem. Washington Heights and Inwood, and a huge Spanish-speaking community. And of course, Nydia Velasquez has the Lower East Side, meeting the needs of the Voting Rights Act, really important. Even though the Supreme Court invalidated it, it is still important that those neighborhoods stay together. So what I'm saying, bottom line, I strongly urge that Manhattan's congressional districts not be consolidated. I don't know anything about the Bronx, but I know all about Manhattan. We don't want to lose local knowledge and effective representation. I want to just mention, because you talked about the census, I want to mention that we worked really hard to make sure that the census, that everybody was counted. And during that process, we tried really hard to make sure that the congressional districts are not jumbled. I have great respect for this contiguous de facto divisions are important. The commission listened to me 10 years ago, and I hope that you'll do the same in the future, this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Mark Levine.
Yeah. And Mr. President-elect, potentially. Okay.
Thank you so much, Chair Imamura. Appreciate this opportunity to testify. Thank you to the Independent Redistricting Commission. I am Mark Levine. I am a city council member in Uptown Manhattan, and I am the Democratic nominee to succeed the wonderful Gil Brewer as the next Manhattan Borough President. It was great to hear her remarks. I currently represent the 7th Council District in Northern Manhattan, which runs from 96th Street on the west side. It includes neighborhoods of Morningside Heights, West Harlem, and Southern Washington Heights, up to 165th Street. And I want to speak as the current borough president, Gil Brewer, did on the makeup of congressional seats in this borough. This is a very small island. However, it's an island of many distinct communities, and I don't think that outsiders appreciate just how distinct one neighborhood is from another here in Manhattan. And that is certainly true of the East Side versus the West Side versus Uptown Manhattan, and the unique community of the Lower East Side. And it's why I do believe we need to preserve broad configuration of congressional districts here. East Side and the West Side in particular are defined by history, by geography, but also in a very important way by transit links, because the subway lines run north to south. And that has given very deep connections between neighborhoods that run north to south. So Tribeca has close ties to the West Village, which has close ties to Chelsea, has close ties to Hell's Kitchen, to the Upper West Side, and up to Morningside Heights. Each of them have deep cultural links, familial links, organizational links, nonprofit links that have given them a common identity. And it is appropriate that they be represented by a single congressional district. The same is true of the neighborhoods that run north to south on the East Side. And as Borough President Brewer mentioned, the Lower East Side is unique, and its Latino neighborhoods are appropriately connected to Latino communities across the river in Brooklyn and Queens. Uptown is also a unique neighborhood represented for decades by its own congressional district. But I also want to speak about the deep connections between Upper Manhattan and the West Bronx, which are today together in a single district, the 13th district, as is proper. The ties across the river, across the Harlem River, between Uptown Manhattan and the West Bronx are deep. Together, these two neighborhoods really are the epicenter of Dominican life in America, the largest concentration of immigrants from the Dominican Republic. And the bridges across the East River from Washington Heights and Inwood to the West Bronx are really like local streets. So for all these reasons, I'm asking you that you keep Uptown and the West Bronx together, that you keep distinct congressional districts for the East Side and the West Side, and that you keep the Lower East Side connected to its current district in Brooklyn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Next, we have Kim Mascaratolo.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify. My name is Kim Mascaratolo. I am the Female Democratic District Leader for the 76th Assembly District Part B, which includes parts of the Upper East Side in Yorkville and Manhattan. I want to first thank the Commission for committing to this open and transparent process. I was actually president of the Manhattan Young Democrats back during the last round of redistricting, and I remember being incredibly disappointed by the process back then. Despite promises of independence, legislators drew their own lines, and Democratic and Republican leaders conspired to protect their majorities and their own incumbents. And so I think we now have this incredible opportunity to really create fair district lines. I think it's really imperative that the Commission follow some basic redistricting best practices. So that includes the fact that districts should be geographically compact and contiguous. It should provide racial and ethnic minorities with an equal opportunity to participate in the political process, and it should minimize the division of communities of interest. Here in Manhattan, I'll give you an example. There are some districts that are particularly egregious, and one, for example, is the 29th Senate District, which is very ably represented by Senator Jose M. Serrano. But if you look at the district, it includes a large swath of the Bronx, but it also includes a portion of East Harlem, as well as the Upper East Side from 92nd Street to 111th Street, as well as a small chunk of the Upper West Side and Roosevelt Island. This is neither geographically compact nor contiguous, and not not only that, but the dividing line between the 28th and the 29th Senate districts literally cuts through a public housing complex, such that residents of the Holmes Towers have one state senator and residents of Stanley Isaacs have another. These are 5 buildings that sit on the same property and should absolutely be considered a community of interest. So I think this is just one example of the kind of lines that we saw in 2012, and I think this commission has a great opportunity to right some of these wrongs and create truly fair districts. My final suggestion would just be to create overlap between Senate and Assembly districts whenever possible. Obviously, those districts are of different sizes, but for example, where I live on 91st Street and First Avenue, my state senator is Liz Kruger, my assembly member is Rebecca Seawright. Directly across the street, the state senator becomes Jose Serrano. And if you go 2 blocks over to East 93rd Street, they are represented, as I said, between Kruger and Serrano, but then also have a different assembly member in Robert Rodriguez. So I do believe residents are best served when there is consistency in their representation. And so to the degree that you can create overlap between the same representatives and communities, I think you should try to do so. So I want to thank you so much for listening to my testimony today. I look forward to seeing this process move forward and to finally having fair district lines that I think New Yorkers deserve. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Kim. Before we hear from Jessica, I want to acknowledge that Commissioner John Conway has joined us. John, do you want to say anything before we continue? Or maybe we may have lost John. But in any case, Jessica, sorry about that. Please go ahead.
No, thank you so much. Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Lapin, president of the Downtown Alliance, which is the business improvement district in Lower Manhattan, the area south of the Brooklyn Bridge, from the Battery to the river. And before that, I was a city council member for District 5 on the Upper East Side in East Midtown, Sutton Place, and Turtle Bay, and Roosevelt Island. And as somebody who has been very actively engaged in community here for over 25 years now, both as an elected official and now as a civic leader, I strongly believe that the congressional districts on the east and west sides of Manhattan should remain separate. This would allow distinct communities that share common interests to be kept together and for purposes of representation, much better served in Washington as a result. The current congressional lines were drawn by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals by a special master who's a redistricting expert. And the lines that are drawn today make clear sense, as they have for the last 40 years. And there's a reason. The east and west sides are very different geographically, socially, politically. And from my vantage point downtown with the Alliance, I see how Wall Street, Battery Park City, Tribeca share strong connections and resources with the Village, with Chelsea, and further north, including the waterfront, our parks, and our schools. And the Hudson River really unites the West Side. It creates common interests like resiliency, like ferry service, tunnel infrastructure, anti-terrorism efforts. It's also worth noting that the West Side has one of the largest concentration of Jews in the United States, and I think that community of interest should remain in one congressional district. But in my other hat as a former council member and current East Side resident, I can also speak to the distinct character and needs of this part of Manhattan. The East Side contains the bulk of our city's cultural gems, from household names like the Met Museum and Museum Mile to the 92nd Street Y and many, many other cultural playhouses and others. As somebody else already spoke to, our concentration of hospitals, the best not just in the city, but I would say in the world. The East River Esplanade is also distinct and critical when it comes to infrastructure. The list goes on and on. So while it may seem like it's just separating these two neighborhoods by one large park, the reality is it's remarkable how different the ethos, the culture, the political interests and needs are of these two distinct areas. So with that, we hope you will respect the 40 years of smart thinking and history. I also testified 10 years ago. I can't believe how quickly time passes, but I would ask you to maintain these two as separate and distinct communities and represented by two different congressional members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Commissioner Conway, I'm sorry about that. Did you want to speak briefly, or?
No, I'm all set. Thank you. I've been listening.
Okay.
I don't.
Sorry to put you on the spot, John. Sorry, John. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Liz, how are you?
I'm good, commissioners. Imamura and other commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Liz Young, and I'm the coordinator of Asian Pacific American Voting and Organizing to Increase Civic Engagement, APA Voice Redistricting Task Force. Chinatown, Manhattan, the oldest Asian ethnic enclave in the city, is still an iconic neighborhood. For the past 10 years, Chinatown has struggled to survive amid relentless gentrification, the death of Private Danny Chen, a Chinatown son who died in Afghanistan after being hazed and racially maltreated by his superiors, fires, and now COVID-19. Long before it became a major tourist attraction, Chinatown, Manhattan was and still is a community with deep and enduring roots. Resilient, Chinatown began with Doyer and Pell streets and has grown to more than 40 streets and 55 blocks. The Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, including regional and family associations that governed and protected Chinatown from its inception in the 1870s, are still active. These associations continue to welcome the community with added support from Chinatown being designated as a business improvement district following 9/11. Landmark businesses and institutions, including Chinatown Ice Cream Factory, Chinatown Head Start, Charles B. Wong Community Health Center, PS 130 and PS 124, Hong Kong Supermarket, and major social service providers like CPC and AFI are thriving. It is home to the Museum of Chinese in America, the only Asian American museum on the East Coast. Columbus Park remains the site of Tai Chi, chess, and Mahjong. Canal Street is bustling with vendors. Asian American vets religiously congregate at the Kim Lao Post. The Transfiguration Church still holds services in Mandarin and Cantonese, and Confucius Plaza is fully occupied with a long wait list. Historically divided visionary leadership and tenacious advocacy finally led to Chinatown, Manhattan being kept intact in the 2000 redistricting cycle. More than ever, Manhattan's power must not be diluted. On top of gentrification boxing in Chinatown on all four sides, Chinatown must deal with Asian American small businesses hit hard by COVID-19. The spike in hate crimes, and the ongoing controversy of a fourth jail in Manhattan's Chinatown. To take on these formidable challenges, Chinatown, Manhattan must not be divided, not only should Manhattan Chinatown remain whole in any political district drawn, but it also is a community of interest with the Asian American community in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. The overflow to Chinatown, Manhattan, who were priced out by the rising rents, relocated to Sunset Park. First Cantonese immigrants, then Fujianese. Riding the N train and limited by language barriers, they have continued to work in the more than 200 small businesses and restaurants in Manhattan's Chinatown, now impacted by COVID-19. Last sentence. As the federal court has recognized, these two neighborhoods have shared destinies and should continue to be kept together in the same congressional district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. We are joined by Commissioner Frazier. Commissioner, would you like to speak briefly?
Welcome, and I apologize for being late.
No worries at all. So we have 6 commissioners. So I think we're good to go. Alec, yes. Hi, Alec, how are you?
I am well, how are you?
All right, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. My name is Alec Bartlett, and I'm a Democratic district leader from the 69th Assembly District, Part B, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I'm also a software developer specializing in data visualization, and I have experience working with census data and creating maps of New York's political districts. It is essential for new district lines to maintain the integrity of whole neighborhoods, like Manhattan's West Side. Districts should conform as much as possible to geographic borders like Central Park and pre-existing political boundaries, such as community boards or census neighborhood tabulation areas. Similarly, congressional and state legislative districts should, in my opinion, share borders as much as possible. Spreading districts over many neighborhoods and neighborhoods over many districts makes it harder for our representatives to spend time in their districts. It means district staff are spread thin, unable to fully understand and attend to hyperlocal issues that affect their constituents. It makes it exponentially more difficult to coordinate with the many other systems, such as police precincts, community boards, fire battalions, and BIDs that serve the same community. To give two examples from the current district map, an Upper West Side resident who lives along a particular part of Riverside Park has to walk over 3 miles to reach their state senator's district office on First Avenue. A different state Senate district on the Upper West Side overlaps with parts of 9 different police precincts, 5 community boards, and 4 community school districts. This is not a commentary on our capable senators in Albany. It is simply much harder for any elected official and their hardworking staffs to serve a disjointed district than a compact one. I'd like to close by speaking from my personal experience campaigning and organizing on the West Side. I believe that when the electoral process is easy for New Yorkers to understand, that is good for our democracy. But when the process is opaque, arbitrary, or confusing, that is bad for our democracy. Unlike in the suburbs, where campaigns go door to door, most of our petitioning and campaigning happens at street corners, subway stops, and farmers markets, where we might reasonably think that a person walking by is a local voter. However, there's an 11-block stretch of Amsterdam Avenue where a resident is represented by one of 6 different combinations of assembly member, senator, and congressperson, depending on what corner they live on. For campaigns or constituent services trying to canvass residents, or for a voter trying to figure out which candidates will be on their ballot, but not necessarily their neighbors across the street, meandering district lines make this unnecessarily complicated and potentially discouraging. I urge the commission to place the neighborhoods that make up the West Side in fewer districts and spread our districts across fewer neighborhoods. District lines that conform to familiar neighborhood boundaries means representatives more visible in their districts, easier coordination between district offices and local agencies, and a more accessible electoral process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alec. Really appreciate it. Jerry, how are you?
Hi, Commissioner, and everyone else. Thanks again for having a hearing to let us speak. My name is Jerry Vadamala. I'm the director of the Democracy Program at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF. We are a 47-year-old nonpartisan civil rights organization that's headquartered right here in Manhattan, but we do work nationally. And our mission is to protect the civil rights of Asian Americans. We do that through litigation, advocacy, community education, and organizing. In the area of voting rights, ALDEF works on enforcement of the Federal Voting Rights Act, bilingual ballots, electoral reform, anti-Asian voter discrimination, and redistricting. We are a member of the APA Voice Redistricting Task Force, as well as a member of the Unity Map Coalition, which also includes Latino Justice, PERLDEF, the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, and the Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar Evers College. We've been involved since 1982 in the redistricting process because, in part, Chinatown was divided at the state assembly level. We continue to work on redistricting the last several decades. We challenge redistricting plans that violate the Voting Rights Act. We were also instrumental in creating Asian American majority districts at the state assembly, state senate, and city council level. We litigated Favors v. Cuomo on behalf of Asian American voters in the last cycle, and that led to the creation of the first plurality Asian American congressional district, Congressional District 6, which elected the first Asian American to Congress from New York State. We also, in that litigation, argued that congressional district, it was then 12, now 7, must be maintained and ensure that Asian American voters are kept together in Manhattan's Chinatown, as well as in Brooklyn Sunset Park. In Diaz v. Silver, a federal litigation, the court recognized that these communities, Manhattan's Chinatown and Brooklyn Sunset Park, are in fact a community of interest that must not be divided. And we strongly argue that they should not be divided and remain together in the current configuration of Congressional District 7. In the area of the Bronx, we have a much smaller population there for the Asian American community, but there are certain neighborhoods that we do want to keep intact, and that is Parkchester and Eastchester. There's a large Bengali community there that lives in a certain number of apartment buildings. And as we mentioned in the last hearing, we will again submit our Asian American communities of interest, the maps down to the street, so you can see the neighborhoods that we're talking about, accompanied by a narrative. And again, we do plan on submitting the unity map with our partners to give you a proposal that we believe best represents and protects all of the groups that are protected under the Federal Voting Rights Act. I do want to remind you that Asian Americans are a protected group under the Federal Voting Rights Act. Even though there's been some challenges, the Federal Voting Rights Act is still in full force and effect and must be respected and complied with. We hope to work with you on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. Mark, how are you? You are on mute, Mark.
I've only been doing this for 18 months, so you think I'd get the hang of it.
You and me both, Mark. You and me both.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to present to you and all the commissioners. My name is Mark Diller. I think I should note at the outset that I am a member and former chair of Community Board 7 on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I'm also a commissioner of the New York City Civic Engagement Commission, and none of those people will claim my testimony today. This is entirely my own, and I can't burden them with what I'm about to share. Other speakers have already, I've submitted written testimony, which won't fit in 3 minutes, so a couple of highlights if I may. Other speakers have already spoken with eloquence about the communities of interest that populate the area near me here on the Upper West Side, and by extension, the Upper West Side itself. Communities that include unique racial and ethnic and religious communities and identities. I would add to that, and I think one of the previous speakers spoke about the built fabric and the landmark nature of our area. You plop somebody down in my neighborhood, they know that they're on the west side, not the east side. Each community is wonderful and beautiful, but it is distinct and unique, and it needs to have representation that understands that. We all face very similar challenges, and I don't see the timer, so I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, thank you. We face similar challenges. Fixing public housing is the responsibility of every single person in our community and beyond. Making sure that voters have access to the ballot is incredibly important. Living up to the promise of how our public schools should educate all of our children and do it with equity and with fairness and with equal funding or equitable funding. These are all goals that we all share, but the history and the identities of our communities make the way in which we go about achieving those goals that we share quite different. And it's important to keep our communities together in order to have a singular focus on those aspects of it. I've mentioned briefly the recovery from the pandemic. I believe the turnstile to that is through the tourism industry, which is one of several pillars that prop up our economy. And you don't bring back tourism in our city, I believe, without the arts, the performing arts and the fine arts. And that in turn requires supporting the arts and the hospitality industry that supports coming to see the arts. The West Side has Lincoln Center, it has Broadway, my favorite symphony space, and other areas that have unique challenges, different than some of the cultural events that and opportunities that come along. The last point that I'll try to emphasize is that I actually live in one of those cul-de-sacs that has been previously mentioned to you. I live in the 29th Senate District, and when the New York State Senate recently had funding available and asked community boards for input, trying to find worthy projects that fit within each cul-de-sac was really a challenge. I thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it. May, how are you?
Hi, hello. Thanks for having us today. I will be really brief because I am in Chinatown where the internet connectivity is really bad, and I've been kicked off of this call about 10 times since I got on. Okay, so my name is May Lee. I'm the executive director of the Chinese Progressive Association. We are in Chinatown on the Lower East Side. My organization is also a member of APA Voice, and I think you've heard from a couple of other people on this call. So we serve those who live, work, or go to school in Chinatown and the Lower East Side. You know, there's been a lot of change down here, but I want to stress that Chinatown and the Lower East Side is still a community of common interest. There's a Chinese community on in the core of Chinatown on Mott Street, where everybody goes, and there's the one on the Lower East Side part, and the two are still need to be kept together. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Sunset Park, which is across the river. That's Sunset Park, Brooklyn. It is also Chinatown, Lower East Side, and Sunset Park are a community of common interest. Right now, Congressional District 7, in that district, they're together. And the reason why I wanted to explain again is that, we serve new immigrants, and many new immigrants stay in our community. Some actually move to Sunset Park after their families grow, but they still come back to Chinatown. They work here, they might go to school here, their kids might go to school here, and they still have family members here. So they're back and forth. And what keeps them back and forth, or we use public transportation. So that N line or the R line, I think, is what keeps us, going together. The other thing is just a little bit about numbers. Our second largest group of constituents are Sunset Park residents. The first largest group are the Chinatown residents. And then also recently, for the elections, we did a lot of outreach about voting and ranked choice voting, and we did voter registration on the streets in Chinatown only. But and we register everyone who's eligible. But of all those that we registered or talked to, a third of them actually lived in Sunset Park. So what I'm saying is that even though there's a river that runs through it, it's like a single ecosystem. And also, you heard that Chinatown was hit hard economically by the shutdown and the pandemic. And so that's why we need to get together to so that our congressional representatives or any representative can advocate for us together.
Thank you, May. Appreciate your coming by. Eddie, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Eddie Questa, Executive Director of Dominicanos USA, a not-for-profit and nonpartisan organization committed to the civic, social, and economic integration of Dominican Americans into all facets of the American life. Thus advocates and strive to ensure that every U.S. citizen is able to freely and easily exercise their civil rights, realize their full potential, and capitalize on all the opportunities the U.S. has to offer. Our contribution to making this vision a reality begins with our direct and grassroots work in the Dominican American community. Dominicanos USA is here today because the New York State redistricting process is intimately tied to our representative democracy, which is essential to the progress of our growing yet potent population. Dominican Americans make up a significant portion of New York's largest and diverse Latino population. According to the 2017 estimates from the Census Bureau American Community Survey, in New York State, the Dominican population estimates are 872,000. Dominican now stands as the largest Latino national subgroup in New York. Dominicans in New York City amount for more than 1 of every 9 citizens, making it 12%. Dominicans are 29% of all the Latinos in New York City. The Dominican population in the Bronx is 355,000 and account for nearly 1 of every 4 residents. This is almost half of the borough's Latino residents. The Bronx is the U.S. county with by far the largest Dominican population. There are several districts in the Bronx and Northern Manhattan that are gerrymandered and winding. Future congressional, Senate, and Assembly maps should reflect communities with neighborhoods of common interest. By geographically defining the Dominican community, the only thing that separates the West Bronx and Manhattan is the Harlem River. I can start to define our neighborhoods with the celebration of the Dominican Day Parade along Grand Concourse in the Bronx. Going over any of the 3 bridges, 207th Street, 181st Street, 145th Street, which crosses the East River to connect the West Bronx to Northern Manhattan, make this a very cohesive community. The Dominican community of the West Bronx and Northern Manhattan are a hub of activity. The sounds of bachata, reggaeton, and merengue music can be heard on the streets and the parks. In these Dominican neighborhoods, there are many churches, schools, colleges, supermarkets, remittance companies, restaurants, and medical center, livery cab companies, bodegas, family-owned small businesses, and street vendors offering Dominican products. This way of life ties the Dominican community together. Understanding the complexity that exists in the redistricting, we want to reiterate the importance of guaranteeing that communities which have traditionally been disenfranchised are now once again faced with diminished electoral power. We know you share our goals of a fair redistricting process, that allows all New Yorkers a meaningful opportunity to participate and results in maps that provide underrepresented New Yorkers an opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice. We look forward to working with you to achieve this important goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
Anthony Hoffman, how are you today? You are on mute, Mr. Hoffman.
Yes, fine, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Hoffman. I have lived in Greenwich Village for the past 53 years and have been active in my community since I moved here in 1968. For background, I have been an active member of the 13th Street Block Association, the Village Independent Democrats, the PS 41 PTA, Community Board Number 2, the Village Temple, and J Street, a pro-peace, pro-Israel organization. From 1981 to 1991, I was the elected Democratic Party district leader for the 66th Assembly District, Part A. I strongly urge the New York State Redistricting Commission to keep Greenwich Village as defined by the area south of 14th Street, north of Houston Street, west of 5th Avenue to the Hudson River in one congressional district, as it has been for the past 30 years. When I moved to Greenwich Village in 1968, a significant part of the village was joined with Staten Island in one district. That long ago, ill-thought-out joining of two different communities was dysfunctional, and it did not work for either. Greenwich Village has a progressive culture that should not be diluted. It is drawn from historic roots that spring from political liberalism to accidents of geography and even public transportation. Together, they establish a unity that should remain a cohesive unit. A significant portion of Greenwich Village is located in three landmark districts: the Greenwich Village Historic District, the South Village Historic District, and the Meatpacking District. There is much effort by the real estate industry to develop parts of the historic district. I urge you to keep Greenwich Village compact, keep these three historic districts within Greenwich Village so that we speak with one voice on behalf of the historic districts. Excuse me. I was the four-time president of the Village Independent Democrats and the elected Democratic district leaders, I told you previously. Both of these positions serve similar communities, but I found a significant difference between the east side of my district, which was east of 5th Avenue, and that was west of 5th Avenue. And I think very much they should be kept intact, one on the west side, one on the east. Greenwich Village is known throughout the world as an iconic place for its history, the arts, and its progressive politics. It is lined with other communities up and down the west side. The LGBTQ community has strong historic roots in the West Village of Manhattan, as well as Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen. The 10th Congressional District, which was drawn by a special master, should be kept intact. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us. Dan Cohen, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you, David. Good afternoon. My name is Dan Cohen, and I am the Democratic State Committeeman for the 69th Assembly District. I was elected in 2010 and have lived in the two adjacent Manhattan Valley, Morningside Heights neighborhoods my entire life, 50 years. I have testified on redistricting previously following the last census cycle, and was also the principal litigant against the previous incarnation of this body, the New York State Legislative Task Force on Demographic Research and Reapportionment, in the case Cohen v. Latfor, and then its successor case, Cohen v. Cuomo, in 2012. Back then, the issue was congressional and state legislative seats, somewhat similar concerns to what we have today. I live in the 10th Congressional District, ably represented by Congressman Jerry Nadler, and the district includes the entirety of the West Side and should continue to do so. Others today will speak on the subject of the congressional lines, but I urge you to maintain them largely as they are, and to also maintain the 10th separate from the East Side 12th District, ably represented by Carolyn Maloney. The previous Redistricting Commission maintained the integrity of some of the legislative districts and struggled with others. In particular, it must address the challenge of the 31st State Senate District, which was drawn to punish then State Senator Eric Schneiderman for defying the will of Albany in his support of true leadership and progressive legislation. though he would be later disgraced by his personal conduct. At the time, he nonetheless won re-election to the seat. After he was elevated to higher office, it was held briefly by Marisol Alcantara during her single-term foray into the machinations of the Republican Party-controlled Independent Democratic Conference, and is now well represented by Robert Jackson. The district, which brings to mind the South American country of Chile in its design, runs from 23rd Street to 223rd Street, and despite heroic efforts on the part of Senator Jackson, its elongated design does not serve its constituents well. I am sure Representative Senator Jackson will provide more thoughtful commentary on how to redraw the district than I can today, but I hope the commission will finish its work it started a decade ago. I would like to take the balance of my time to speak on the 69th Assembly District, which, as I mentioned previously, I have lived in for my entire life. The district runs roughly from 86th to 125th Streets, including the northern parts of the Upper West Side, and including the entirety of the neighborhoods of Manhattan Valley and Morningside Heights. Particularly due to the arbitrary border of 110th Street as the dividing line between the two community boards, CB7 and CB9, those neighborhoods are frequently overlooked in other areas of representation. At the northern end of CB7, Manhattan Valley often struggles for recognition among its wealthier and more visible sister neighborhoods to the south, and similarly, Morningside Heights, it is too at the southern end of CB9, though it must make a determined effort to get its needs met as well. But Assembly's District 69 represents its constituents well, spanning both neighborhoods, and thus does not need to be altered. It has been very well represented by the past 20 years by Assemblyman Daniel O'Donnell. It is compact and keeps several neighborhoods together and whole, and I urge you to maintain the 69th Assembly District as it is, and not to make any changes that would upset the careful and thoughtful balance the area has achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. Deborah Cooper, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Today's my birthday.
From the commission, happy birthday. Why are you here?
Well, I'm taking my grandchildren not bowling, golfing later. Anyway, this is not part of my time. So my name is Deborah Cooper, and I have happily been a resident of the Upper West Side for more than 40 years. It's a unique and special place in our city. And my community involvement has been president of my co-op and on the board of my synagogue and the PTA of my children's school, which is very indicative of how the West Side is in general. And I thank you for allowing me to give you this testimony. I have been the Democratic State Committee woman for the Upper West Side, the 67th Assembly District, for 14 years, just south of where Dan Cohen is. At national meetings and conferences, when I have identified myself as the committee woman from the Upper West Side, I have actually received appreciative applause, not for myself, but for the place I represent. There is an instantaneous recognition in the audience of the cultural, political, and social significance of this place in New York City. And there are cultural similarities amongst those who inhabit this district from Brooklyn Heights to the Upper West Side. The West Side has all its crucial infrastructure on the west side of Manhattan, going from south to north. The subway lines, the 1, 2, and 3, go from north to south. Its transportation hubs like PATH train, Penn Station, Port Authority, the World Trade Center connect to those subway lines on that north-south axis. Its parks run up the Hudson River from the Battery to the north to northern Riverside Park. Its school districts also go from north to south, as do the community boards. And neither community boards nor school districts should be divided, as that makes the ability for them to function to be very, very difficult. The police precincts also run from north to south. All this physical infrastructure is connected to people who quite vigorously assert the needs and concerns of their community, as we all know. Upper West Siders are very, very communicative. For 40 years, whoever has been its sole representatives, which is from Ted Weiss, who was the only person to vote against the Vietnam War, and Jerry Nadler, who also is a man of conscience, but who also represents their districts very well, because the West Side has a sense of conscience. They do that diligently, assiduously, and with deep understanding. The 10th CD is also home to one of the largest Jewish populations in the United States. There are many synagogues besides. Please keep the 10th CD as a contiguous physical, political, social entity. The 10th CD may have changed its number with each redistricting cycle, but has not changed its essential character, one which was also recognized by prior redistrictings, as well as in the last cycle by the Special Master of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And this would be a great birthday present if you actually heeded my pleas. Thank you very much.
Well, I make no promises, but happy birthday from the commission, Deborah. Appreciate you coming. Paul Devlin, how are you today, sir?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you for hosting this hearing on a very critical issue of our day. These hearings are an important way for the voices of our neighborhoods to be heard, and I appreciate all the time that you're putting into this process. So, as you said, my name is Paul Devlin. I live on West 45th Street in Hell's Kitchen. I'm the Hell's Kitchen Democratic Club district leader. I'm a member of the Community Board 4. I'm an activist with Gays Against Guns to end the gun violence epidemic. I'm on the advisory council for the Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen in Chelsea to help serve our neighbors in need. And as a paid job, I'm a real estate agent with an office in the Upper West Side. But I'm not here representing any of those organizations. I'm here to speak on my collective experiences in our distinct neighborhoods. On a daily basis, I witness the unique aspects of each of the neighborhoods on the West Side and the qualities that make us good neighbors as I move through my workday and into my volunteer evenings. Our borough is oriented in a north-south direction. The avenues and infrastructure move people in that direction. The separation between the West Side and the East Side extends far beyond the short geographic distance and the expansive park that is in the center of our island. As a gay activist and real estate agent, I've seen the shift of the residents of the queer population migrate from the West Village to Chelsea to Hell's Kitchen. There is a sense of community that helps keep those neighborhoods whole. As a resident of Hell's Kitchen, I interact with neighbors with roots of multi-generations in Hell's Kitchen. There's a community group that I can't even join because the requirement is that you must have lived in Hell's Kitchen for 3 generations, and that's a very vibrant group. As a member of the community board, I serve on both the Chelsea Land Use Committee and the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. We have 2 distinct land use committees to address the unique concerns and issues of the 2 distinct neighborhoods. Within Chelsea, we have NYCHA campuses, the High Line, which runs north-south, and multiple historic districts. Then in Hell's Kitchen, we have Hudson Yards, Penn Station, and Port Authority. Just listing these specific places, which you can all identify, proves the point of the distinct concerns of these neighborhoods. To break up our neighborhoods into separate districts with multiple representatives in our governing bodies would not make sense. I urge that when you are considering drawing lines for districts, you consider the wholeness of our neighborhoods and the north-south axis of our island. I would ask that you look at community district boundaries as a guide for drawing any lines in order to keep neighborhoods and their representation whole. And I'd ask that you keep both the West Side and the East Side as distinct, cohesive units. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you joining us. New Joshi, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Anu Joshi, and I'm the Vice President of Policy at the New York Immigration Coalition. We're an umbrella policy and advocacy organization that works statewide with over 200 immigrant-serving member organizations from Buffalo to Brentwood. And we're currently engaged in a robust redistricting advocacy campaign called Mapping Our Future that includes community education, mobilization, and targeted advocacy. Our campaign is highlighting our organizational members' experiences with unfair districts and amplifying their voices on the impacts of redistricting on their everyday lives, on things like their access to healthcare, food, education, and housing. And what we know is that fair districts are the foundation for fair representation. The opportunity to draw fair districts only comes every 10 years, and there are no do-overs. If we don't get this right, our communities have to live with the consequences for the next decade. District maps that make it impossible for communities to elect their own members often mean a decade of having the needs of that community deprioritized. If candidates and elected officials know that they can get reelected while ignoring certain communities, they may do just that. Our work as the NYC on fair and humane immigration policies, affordable housing, police reform, and so much more is made harder because some incumbents feel untouchable. But a good redistricting process can remedy that. Well-drawn districts that keep communities of interest together can protect New York's immigrants and communities of color, allow challengers to have a fair shot at winning elections, and energize civic engagement. These public hearings are a truly promising start, but I urge the IRC to consider the entire redistricting process to be a public one. At a minimum, we feel this must include maintaining an up-to-date website of upcoming meetings and events, an archive of past meetings and events, meetings that are open to the public and announced with adequate advance notice, a commitment to partner with advocacy organizations like ours and all of our member organizations on community events, and a commitment to engage with ethnic media across multiple platforms so the public is aware of IRC events and announcement. The unfortunate reality is that New York's district maps have been egregiously gerrymandered for decades. To remedy this, the IRC must not use the current maps as a starting point. Redistricting New York has historically been a closed and opaque process. We are calling for a fully open and transparent process that includes public education, public meetings, regular updates, and full transparency. We're demanding fair districts and fair representation, and we need to ensure that our voices are heard and our needs are prioritized. Thank you again for holding this hearing, and thanks again to the many partners who are in this fight for fair maps and fair representation.
Thank you, Anu. Appreciate your coming. Danielle Girard, how are you today? You are on mute, Danielle.
I'm fine, thank you very much. So thank you for this opportunity to testify before the commission. My name's Danielle Girard. I was born and raised in New York City, and I've lived uptown, downtown, on the east side and the west side. I first bought an apartment on the Upper West Side in 1996, and I've been a member of 3 Parks Independent Democrats since 2004 and on the board of directors since 2006. In my private life, I'm a civil rights lawyer for children. I'm testifying before you today because I believe it is of the utmost importance to keep the 10th Congressional District a single district on the west side. This is for several reasons that I can't adequately cover in 3 minutes, so I'm going to focus on just a few of them that make sense based on the way our communities were formed and historically on how the districts have always been drawn. First, as you know, the current congressional lines were drawn not by political gerrymandering, but by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, specifically by a redistricting expert special master. The lines as drawn in Manhattan make eminent sense and have for the last 40 years. Second, the West Side has shared community facilities, such as the subways, which have been commented on before, that run north-south, not east-west, elementary and middle school zones that do not cross Central Park or run river to river, contiguous waterfront parks from the Battery to Riverside, including Hudson River Park running from Chambers to 59th. New York's harbor and the Hudson River unite the downtown part of Manhattan with the West Side, as we saw with the impacts of Hurricane Sandy and now see with the need for improved resiliency along our coast to address the impact of further climate change disasters. Community boards should also be contiguous, as has been mentioned. Each board has issues and focuses that require expertise in their local area. The community boards on the West Side should not be broken up between congressional districts. For example, boards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 are almost wholly within a single congressional district and should remain that way. The New York City Police Department precincts also largely run north-south and not east-west. The divisions between the east and west sides contribute to why the precincts are structured that way. Third, in culture and character, Morningside Heights, particularly around Columbia, has more in common with the Upper West Side than other parts of Manhattan. Columbia University is a premier educational institution and community of interest that should be in one congressional district. In addition, our representation over the past many years by Congressman Nadler has shown just how important it is for the members of this community not to have their voices diluted on the federal level. Please maintain the lines of the 10th Congressional District and keep our communities intact. Thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you, Danielle, for coming before the commission. Catherine McVeigh Hughes, how are you today?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to testify in redistricting in Manhattan. I'm a 30-plus year financial district resident of the 10th District of New York, and I've been very involved in rebuilding Lower Manhattan after 9/11 and again after Superstorm Sandy in 2012 and now COVID. My full affiliations are below. We raised our family one block east of the World Trade Center site. We chose to stay in Lower Manhattan to be part of rebuilding and recovery now for the third time. We stayed because we trusted the continuity provided by our 10th district legislative representative in the leadership of Congressman Nadler and his team. To understand the importance of this district, here are 3 critical facts. First, government action and leadership were central to the recovery after 9/11 and Sandy. Lower Manhattan would be a dead zone today had it not been for a concerted, sustained, and effective government response. This was not about government getting out of the way. The private sector abandoned Lower Manhattan after 9/11 and Sandy, only returning after government restored essential services and rebuilt business confidence. Second, Lower Manhattan is an extraordinarily complex mosaic of jurisdictions. All 3 branches of state government operate here, as well as the city council, the borough president, the mayor, and the community board. Lower Manhattan is the linchpin of the MTA regional transit network and home to the 2nd largest state authority, the Battery Park City Authority, and the Bi-State Port Authority operates the Trade Center and the Path. Nowhere in the country is the organization of government more intertwined. Third, the current congressional district has maintained its boundaries for over 40 years. People know it, and they know that their representative understands the community and its concerns, and most importantly, it works. 1, community boards should not be split between congressional districts. 2, security continues to be a top priority. NYPD police precincts in Manhattan largely run north-south and not east-west. 3, Financial District, South Street, Seaport, Battery Park City, and Tribeca share connections and community resources with the village, including parks, waterfront, and schools. 4, New York's harbor and the Hudson River unite downtown with the East River. We saw the devastating and costly impacts of Hurricane Sandy, now see the critical need for improved waterfront resiliency, including the dense Fidei Seaport area where high tide already splashes over the Esplanade. Congressman Nadler has made sure that our community got the services and support that we needed to bring back America's 4th largest business district and its diverse community. We need to have a member of Congress who understands the complex character of our area, and today's District 10 assures us that. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here again 10 years later testifying.
Thanks so much, Catherine, for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Same to you. Justin Lee, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity today. Good afternoon. My name is Justin Lee. I'm a law student at New York University, and I am the 3rd generation of my family that has called Chinatown home. I am also a volunteer with Asian Americans for Equality, and I help provide food and clothing to the most vulnerable members of my community. And it is through AFI and the APA Voice Redistricting Task Force that I learned how harmful separate representation of all of New York's Asian American communities could be. Esteemed commissioners, I come before you today to ask you to preserve Chinatown as a whole within the same assembly district and the same congressional district. Doing so would strengthen our community at a time when we are increasingly vulnerable, even as the city opens up and New Yorkers and tourists alike stream back into Chinatown, taking in everything that we have to offer, the cuisine, the atmosphere, and an Instagram backdrop to die for. The need in our community has not abated. And this is because the last year and a half have only highlighted the pain that has been here all along. The affordable housing that has so long made this place a refuge for immigrant families is under siege. The steady tide of gentrification continues to drive deeper into our community and erode what makes this place such a special part of the tapestry that is New York City. And now, as ever, our population, especially our elders, need access to government social services and emergency aid just to make ends meet so that they need not live without just reward for all they have given our city. And lastly, the rise in anti-Asian violence should outrage people of conscience across our state And Chinatown needs the opportunity to raise up champions to fight these outrages all the way to the highest levels of government. And it is in times like these in which we need our voices to be heard in the political process. Maintaining Chinatown as a whole within the same assembly district and the same congressional district would help to do this. It would help unlock the power of the AAPI community at the ballot box. It would also help us get fair representation in government. And so from my earliest memories in my grandfather's restaurant on Bayard Street, I've always loved Chinatown. With all of its characters, its quirks, and all of what it has represented to my family and untold legions like mine, I hope that preserving Chinatown through this process and making sure it has the voice it deserves in the halls of government will ensure it continues to grow and prosper for many years to come. And so, members of the commission, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I urge the commission to preserve Chinatown within the same assembly and congressional districts. So thank you again today.
Thank you, Justin. I think I speak for the 4 lawyers who are here on the commission that's not too late to drop out of law school and turn back. So, Pamela Stewart, how are you today?
Hi, my name is Pam Stewart Martinez. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I've never done this before. This is my first time speaking before the committee, and I'm just so happy to be part of the process. I am the female district leader for the 87th Assembly District. That's in the Bronx. And the reason that I'm here before you is my concern over the 32nd State Senate District. And what I am asking you to do, I'm not hearing from too many of my predecessors who've been speaking before you, I'm asking you to take a second look at the 32nd State Senate District. And I'm asking you to look at it in the sense of it being compact and contiguous. I don't believe that that's the case within the 32nd State Senate District. I feel that because of the fact that it's not compact and contiguous, it does have an impact on the work that the Board of Elections it impacts them in a negative way in the work that they have to do when they have to put together elections for my community. I'd like to just share my screen briefly. I want to show you the map that I have of the 32nd. Hold on just a second, I'm pulling it up. This is what can you see my map right now? Okay, this is what the 32nd State Senate district looks like. I mean, to me, this does not look contiguous at all. In fact, I read something online where they said this bottom area here that's not highlighted in green, this area here, they were saying that that's part of the 29th State Senate District. On the Bronx side, it is convoluted. And then this district also divides up communities, like for example, the Parkchester community. There's a part of the Parkchester community that's not in the 32nd. The majority of it is in the 32nd, but there's a part that's not. And it's a community of buildings where people all live together and they understand one another. And it is a diverse community. Also, it includes Concourse Village. And there's a part of Concourse Village as well that is not included in the 32nd. So you're breaking up communities here. So, I mean, I'm new to this and I'm very new to this, and I just feel that this should be looked at. And I'm gonna give the rest of my time to you if you have any questions that you want to ask me.
Thank you, Pam. So the commission has agreed not to ask questions.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But we are all new to this, so thank you for joining us, this being the first iteration of the commission. So thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your coming before the commission.
And thank you for listening.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say? I think you had like 20 seconds left.
I mean, I just want fair elections. I want people to have options, and I want the Board of Elections not to struggle as much when putting together polling sites in different locations because of the makeup of the way the district is set up. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. Really appreciate your coming before us.
Thank you.
Okay. And so I cannot see who is next because Pam is still sharing her screen. Okay. Matt, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name is Matt Nosenchuk, and I'm an attorney and the president and co-founder of the New York Jewish Agenda, or NYJA, a nonprofit organization founded in March 2020 that is committed to advocacy and education on behalf of liberal mainstream Jews in New York City and state. NYJA represents the values and views of the majority of New York's Jews in support of social justice and key domestic priorities, a democratic Israel, a just negotiated two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and efforts to combat rising anti-Semitism. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to testify in strong support of maintaining the current district lines and come before you today to urge the Redistricting Commission to keep the Manhattan portion of the 10th Congressional District, or New York 10, centered on the city's west side. New York 10 is a congressional district with great historical, social, and political significance, especially to its Jewish community. It is the only congressional district in the US with the Jewish majority, and it also happens to be located in the city with the largest Jewish population in the world. The district has been drawn the same way for 40 years. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We cannot let political, communal, and cultural significance of the district be erased by a redistricting proposal that would wipe out a district that makes geographic and political sense and is an easily identifiable historical, social, and political entity. New York 10 aligns with the many ways that the city is presently organized, including, for example, preserving the contiguity of community boards in the district and mirroring the existing transportation routes, police districts, and other shared community facilities. Our position is further informed by our own presence in the district. NYJA organizes Jewish leaders who share our values and priorities, including a number of leading elected officials. Our NYJA Leaders Network, which numbers more than 100, includes the 10th District's current representative in Congress, Jerry Nadler, a leading voice representing liberal mainstream Jewish New Yorkers in the US Congress. He's ably represented all of New York 10's Jewish constituents, no matter their race, ethnicity, denomination, gender, or generation. New York 10 also includes a number of other NYJA leaders, board members, and co-founders, myself included. I live in Hell's Kitchen, as well as Dan Cohen, who testified before me today. At NYJA, we recognize the safety of New York's Jewish population depends on the kind of representation we're fortunate to have in New York 10 and our ongoing ability to organize as a community. In the past few years, New York's Jewish community has seen the number of Jewish elected officials representing them shrink. This is especially true in New York's congressional delegation. At a time when increased anti-Semitism has threatened the safety and well-being of our communities, it is critical that we ensure that Jewish voices are present at every level of leadership in our city and state. As the president of NYJA, I know that our community is most empowered when we are organized and unified. New York 10 ensures protection and representation for all Jewish New Yorkers. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate your coming before the commission.
Thank you.
Bernadette Ferrara, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to share my screen if possible.
Please go ahead.
Okay, just bear with me. There we go. Oh, okay. Okay. There we go. These are just two maps as I'm speaking. One is a local boundaries and the other is in relation to our Northeast partners. Okay, this afternoon, my name is Bernadette Ferrara. I'm the president of the Van Ness Neighborhood Alliance. I'm also a board member of Community Board 11 for the last 12 years. I am also on the Morris Park Bid Board. Van Ness has always been identified as an East Bronx neighborhood. It is a blue-collar neighborhood of nurses, laborers, mechanics who raise their families to respect their neighbors, friends, and law enforcement. Our diverse population includes primarily Hispanics, African Americans, Muslims, and Caucasians who live together in harmony and respect cultural and racial differences. Van Ness is part of the 49th Precinct Police Precinct, the 49th Clergy Council, and Community Board 11 in the East Bronx. Our members attend both meetings each month. Local residents make up 4 of the 51 board members of Community Board 11. Other neighborhoods within the board are our organizational partners and include Morris Park Community Association, Pelham Parkway Neighborhood Association, Eastchester Gardens, just to name a few. Unfortunately, previous commissions and legislatures ignored our request to keep our neighborhood together. Today in Van Ness, the line separating 2 assembly districts divides Van Ness in half between the 80th and the 87th AD. The state Senate district separates our neighborhood from Morris Park to our east, where we share many of the same problems and concerns. Though not under the jurisdiction of the 2021 State Commission, the city council lines also divide Van Ness between two districts, causing our organization to call multiple elected officials with community problems. Van Ness is abundantly aware that the political division of our community damages the ability to receive financial support from our districts, our elected officials. Since our neighborhood is always on the fringe, so is the funding received from electeds, while those neighborhoods in the heart of the district benefit. This is no surprise to any of the commission members. Van Ness has no youth programs nor a program for seniors. Parts of our Van Ness, in conclusion, we request the following: an end to the division of the Van Ness community through reapportionment. Number two, Van Ness and neighboring communities within Community Board 11 and 49 precinct whose boundaries are the same. And three, Van Ness has always been identified as an East Bronx neighborhood, and we want to continue to fight with community groups to the east and north to improve the quality of life for each and every resident. Thank you for the commissioner for holding these listening sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much.
Robin Forrest, how are you today?
I am fine. How are you?
Thank you for joining us.
My name is Robin Forrest, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify at the Independent Redistricting Committee hearing. I am a longtime resident of Battery Park City, a community of approximately 15,000 residents located directly across the street from the World Trade Center site. The 92 acres that comprise Battery Park City were built on landfill from the original construction or excavation of the World Trade Center. Since its creation, the community has grown and flourished and has become increasingly important as an anchor of Manhattan's Lower West Side residential community. Since moving to Battery Park City about 30 years ago, I have been a community activist and leader. I have served and am serving once again on the local community board. I also currently serve as first vice president of the Gateway Plaza Tenants Association, an organization that represents residents in 1,700 units of residential housing in Lower Manhattan. Several years ago, I was part of a community group that was successful in pushing for the creation of a new public school and the first public library to serve this rapidly growing community. I am a founding board member of Battery Park City Cares and a former PTA president. Though Battery Park City is newer than much of Manhattan's West Side, we have grown to be an integral part of the fabric of the West Side community. We are very closely linked to Tribeca, a community just to our north, and Greenwich Village just to the north of that. We share many resources, including the Hudson River waterfront, Hudson River Park, elementary, middle, and high schools, children's softball, football, and soccer leagues, and multiple transportation entities under the purview of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. In the aftermath of 9/11, we joined with neighboring communities to advocate for the redevelopment of the area for the assessment and monitoring of environmental impacts, including air quality, and of course, the development of health coverage for sick 9/11 survivors. So much of our progress has come with the help of our elected officials, city, state, and federal. It has been extremely important to have a unified West Side for congressional representation. Our issues are interconnected and frankly, are best served under the leadership and oversight of one office. I urge you to support the continuation of the 10th Congressional District as it is currently mapped for the common goals that we share with communities contiguous to ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate you joining us. Roxanne Delgado, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, thank you for joining it. Well, we had your video for a second, and then okay, now we have you.
My name is Roxanne Delgado. I'm a Bronx resident and also founder of Friends of Pelham Parkway, founded in 2017. We care for the parks and the surrounding community of Pelham Parkway. As a member of Friends of Pelham Park, I'd like to ask the commission to think about unifying Pelham Parkway, because 2% Pelham Parkway is divided by two different assembly districts. So 98% is represented by Assembly District 80th, but that small 2% is divided to Assembly District 78. And that district is mostly, it doesn't have any household, it's just a small commercial district with the parkway in the middle and the service and main road. So I think we should unify Pelham Parkway instead of dividing it, because unfortunately, sometimes that little 2% has a little more input than it should have in the reconstruction project that we currently have. So I think it's best to unify Pelham Parkway and have one voice, not be divided, and care for the Greenway as a one unified under one assembly district. So that's what I'm asking for, Commissioner, as a Friends of Pelham Parkway, as a park advocate, as one that cares for the parkway since 2017, have over 15 to 25 volunteers weekly that care for the parkway. We would like to be represented by one assembly district, which most likely should be the 80th, since it comprises 98% of the parkway and 2% by the 78 assembly district. And now, as a constituent, now representing Friends of Pelham Parkway, as an activist who's been involved with for term limits against the pay rates in city council in Albany, been involved with city charter, pay commissioners. I'd like you to think about when we create voting blocks, we disenfranchise other groups in that same community. So yes, you may like to elevate people of color, women, religious groups, but when you do so, it kind of disenfranchise other members of that community, as well as kind of deter them from voting, because they feel like, oh, we're not going to have a say because we know that seat is a Black seat, a white seat, an Asian seat. So I would like us to be more thinking about the needs and issue of a district, as opposed to elevating a district based on just gender or race or a religion. I mean, sure, we like fair representation. Everyone should have a seat at the table, whether you're Black, white, gay or not. But I have seen where communities where people don't vote because they're saying that it's a seat that they know is going to go to a certain demographic, because that district is represented by a majority of a voting block, whether it's Jewish, Gentile, Black or white. So, and Grand Congressional District 15 is one of the poorest districts in the country. I don't think that's something that we should be proud of. We should try to maybe divide that congressional district into a richer area, so their needs will be elevated, as opposed to being the poorest district in the nation. That seems to be a proud issue about that district. We're the poorest, but that's not something that should be elevated. That should be de-elevated and make it into other districts, like schools. When you have schools that are not performing, they divide those schools into higher performing schools. Maybe we should think about dividing that congressional district into higher performing districts, just for the sake of the residents. Sorry, I was not prepared, but I just wanted to participate. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for joining us, Roxanne. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Marisa Redanti, how are you today?
Hello, I'm fine, and thank you for having me. My name is Marisa Redanti. I am the district leader for 75 Part B in Hell's Kitchen. I am also the co-founder of the Hell's Kitchen Neighborhood Action Committee, which was very active since the COVID shutdown in helping small businesses keep their restaurants open, and also dealing with lots and lots of street crime and things like that. I've been an activist most of my life. I've lived in New York for 43 years, 26 of which I have been in the Hell's Kitchen area. So I'd like to start off with this. We on the West Side are completely different in our priorities and concerns and basically ways of life than our East Side sisters and brothers. I think that makes sense. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it should be taken into consideration when dividing up an incredibly successful congressional district. We share our police, which is obviously what I was dealing with this summer. Our police districts, precincts on the West Side are north and south, as is our transportation, which was mentioned before. Now, as district leader, I witnessed the rapid decline in safety on our streets since the shutdown. And with another advocate, we were able to deal with all three of the precincts that were in the same area to find hotspots. We could cooperate because we were in the same district. And that is very important to our residents, especially during this time. We coordinated with Midtown North, Midtown South, and the 10th precinct, which is where a lot of the problems were happening. Now, through the constant communication, we collaborated, we're able to identify things, and the improvement has been vast, but the work is not done. We need to retain this cooperation and teamwork to finish the job, and disturbing these well-devised plans within this area will set our community back and put us at risk for more bolder crimes. Also, our community boards cooperate with one another because we are dealing with the same issues, because we are in the same north-south area. The West Side residents share our transportation, which we said before, and our parks and our waterfront and our schools. So these 40-year-old boundaries were not a result of political interest, but of sound planning. So we need to keep the integrity of that effort and not be swayed by salivating gerrymanderers, which has caused our country and our voting a great deal of strife. Thank you very much for hearing me out, and I hope you'll keep the tent as it is. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Thank you, Marisa. Appreciate you joining us. Janice Oppenheimer, how are you today? Janice, you are scheduled to speak before the commission.
Mute.
Yes. Hi, Janice. We can hear you now.
There I am. Thank you for having me. My name is Janice Oppenheimer, and I am a district leader representing the 67th Assembly District, Part C of Manhattan's Upper West Side in the New York State Democratic Committee. The Assembly member is the Honorable Linda B. Rosenthal. My husband and I live in Lincoln Towers on West End Avenue. We are an integral part of a very vibrant community. The Upper West Side is known for its diversity and progressive politics. It is unique to New York. It should not be separated and combined with the East Side Congressional District, as the East Side has its own community needs. As many people have stated here, we have shared community facilities on the West Side, subways, bike lanes, the West Side Highway. They all go north to south. All the schools and all the communities run river to river. Contiguous waterfront parks run along the Hudson River. My husband and I are both Jewish and feel strongly that the West Side, which has one of the largest concentration of Jews in the United States, should be kept in a single congressional district. Our Congressman Jerry Nadler has been a strong advocate for this constituency. So I urge you all to realize how important it is for the West Side to have its own distinct congressional district. We should not be moved along with the East Side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Karen Smith, how are you today?
Fine. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Karen Smith. I am a retired New York State Supreme Court Justice, and I have lived in the Chelsea community in Penn South since 1962, when I was 13 years old. I know I don't look that old. However, I've been living there. I'm one of the leaders of an organization called LEAPS, Limited Equity and Affordability at Penn South. For those of you who don't know Penn South, we were built by the trade union movement, particularly the Lady Garment Workers Union, and our population is heavily dominated by both trade union people and the elderly. We were the first and the organizers of something called NORC, Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. As a limited equity co-op and an activist in housing for many, many years, I'm part of a group called Cooperators United for Mitchell-Lama, and the majority of work that we've done to assure affordable housing among our people have been on with other cooperatives, on Mitchell-Lama cooperatives on the west side of Manhattan, the lower west side and the upper west side. Very few of those exist anymore on the east side, many of those privatized. I'm also a parent and helped organize Midtown West when my son first went to school. It's a school on 48th Street. And we did a lot of investigation and we developed relationships with people again on the Upper West Side in the school system. I won't repeat what other people have said. I just thought that I would add my voice as an activist in housing and affordable housing, and the specific character of affordable housing is really seen on the west side of Manhattan, which is why I'm urging that you keep and support the 10th Congressional District as it now exists. I've been active in many activities and all of the across the board, whether it's schools or housing or even healthcare. When we lost St. Vincent Hospital, are all across the board, Upper West Side and West Side and Lower West Side, not the East Side. And then one more thing, when I ran for judge, I had to go around to lots of very different clubs to run for judge. And the judges that I met from the East Side versus the judges from the West Side and who I served with on the bench were very different in quality. Not to say they weren't qualified as judges on the East Side, they very much were. but our sensibilities were different. We are a progressive community. In this day and age, we need to continue progressive communities. And the one other thing, and this just haunts me, is my family moved to Penn South, to the Lower West Side, when we were kicked out of Stuyvesant Town because my parents led the anti-discrimination housing fight against Metropolitan Life Insurance Company in Stuyvesant Town. My parents were the leaders of that. And we got kicked out of that and went from there to Penn South. And the Penn South community has continued to warm me in its progressiveness, and that we can't change that. So please keep the 10th congressional district as it is. It works. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. So commissioners, my understanding is that the only person we have left is Councilwoman Helen Rosenthal, and she is coming at 3:45. So given that at past hearings, we have given 5 minutes for any trailing people to come, is everyone all right with waiting for 5 minutes to see, for the councilwoman as well as for any additional people? All right.
Yes.
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 Thank you, commissioners. So we are taking a break for 5 minutes.
This has been great. Do you have?
Yes, how are you, Elaine? So
I'm fine. I'm like overwhelmed and impressed.
I think, as we
Not that we
speak
needed
live.
Not that anybody needed to cheer us along, but this is one of the strongest affirmations of the distance that we have come. And I just really need to say that out loud.
I agree, Elaine. And as we continue to be live on the live feed, I want to remind everyone that this coming Thursday will be our next hearing for the boroughs of Brooklyn and Staten Island. And I believe Commissioners Brady and Flateau had thrown the gauntlet down during our Queens hearing, expecting that Brooklyn would come out strong, just like Queens did, though I don't know. Queens was very strong, Commissioner Brady. I don't.
Well, there's something to be said for, I'm frozen. Something to be said for conciseness too. So not to hedge my bets, but we're all about quality as Queens is as well.
Commissioners, it's my understanding that Councilwoman Rosenthal can't make it.
Okay, that is good to know. So commissioners, should we just wait 3 more minutes and then we will either adjourn or, okay. So Miranda is 3:45. Has anyone else joined us?
No, they haven't, and I don't think we're expecting any more. So.
Okay. So commissioners, unless there's any objection, I would say we should close this session. Is there any objection?
No objection.
Okay.
No objection.
Okay, so there being none, I want to thank the people of the Bronx and Manhattan for joining us today. I know, as Commissioner Frazier was saying, I think this was incredibly productive and helpful for us as we begin our work, redrawing New York State's lines. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing everyone on Thursday for Brooklyn and Staten Island. I open the floor though, to my fellow commissioners. Anyone else would like to weigh in?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Wonderful.
Hi, Mr. Conway.
Meet you at Nathan's.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
Commissioners Cuevas Molina.
Just want to thank everyone for their participation and giving us a very helpful commentary on the district lines in the Bronx and Manhattan.
All right. Well, again, we thank the staff for their tremendous ingenuity in putting all of this together. I still don't understand how you do this behind the scenes. But then again, thank you. And thank you to the public and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye now.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.